Okay, I am here at the intersection of Howard Avenue and the old Harrisburg Road, and I'm looking in front of me at the offices for the Gettysburg Optical and Excalibur Towing. But this property has a much more significant name in history, and that would be the George Weismantle Farm. It was lived in during the time of the battle by a man named George Weismantle. Now, he was born in Germany, and he married his first wife, Margarita, on December the 1st of 1845 here in Gettysburg. But just a year later, on July 12th, 1846, she died, and he married another woman named Catherine Bluebaugh. And that wedding took place on September the 20th, 1846, also in Gettysburg. Now, he fathered a few children. Mary, who was born in 1848. George was born in 1850. Margaret in 1851, and she died in 1862. Amanda in 1853, and Jacob in 1859. Now, in 1860, his occupation was he was a tanner, and he was living in Cumberland Township, Adams County, Gettysburg. He was 5'11". He had black hair and dark eyes. He was a Civil War veteran that enlisted on September the 21st, 1861, and he was mustered into federal service at the Capitol in Harrisburg as a private with Company K of the 101st Pennsylvania Infantry. He was wounded on the peninsula on May 31st, 1862, at the Battle of Fair Oaks, which is also known as Seven Pines, and he was immediately discharged on a surgeon's certificate. Now, in spite of the wound, he enlisted again in Adams County on October the 16th, 1862, as a substitute for a man named Jeremiah Shriver. He mustered into federal service with the 165th Pennsylvania Infantry, which was also known as drafted militia. But he was only one of the two men in the regiment that was mortally wounded during the action in Suffolk, Virginia. And of course, he died in Suffolk on April the 24th, 1863. Now, the significant thing about that is he died, even though he was the owner of this particular farm, he died just before the Battle of Gettysburg. So he never really realized that the Battle of Gettysburg would rage right through his town. And again, the area I'm standing in here is on Howard Avenue, and I'm right across from Barlow's Knoll, which is over here in the distance. The reason the avenue is named Howard is because O.O. Howard, Oliver Otis Howard's 11th Corps troops, retreated as they were attacked from the north. And we've looked at a few video series, the Battle for Northeast Gettysburg and the John Coon Brickyard, all these Confederate troops that would rage by here and rage by George Weismantle's farm in July of 1863 would pass right by here. Now, in the second part, we're going to take a interesting Secrets of the Battlefield look at one of the oldest trees in Gettysburg. And not many people know about this witness tree, but here was his farm stead. And back in the distance, just beyond these large radio towers, you can actually see this tree right here. And that is a witness tree. We're going to go over and take a look at it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. It's one of the oldest trees, maybe in the top 10 here in Gettysburg. And today, it sits behind the Harrisburg Area Community College building. This has been the George Weismantle Farm. Hey, this is going to be the George Weismantle Farm Part 2. And we're back here along the Rock Creek today, and we're looking at this tree, which is a witness tree. It's one of the oldest in town. It's well over 200 years old, and I'm not sure exactly of its type, but it does kind of look like a walnut tree. If anybody has any information that's a tree expert, please correct me on that. But this tree once sat on the George Weismantle farm, or on the outskirts, the property line of the Weismantle farm, which we shot our first video here along the old Harrisburg Road there in the distance. You can see the modern buildings we talked about in part 2. And of course today this farm area was built up with the addition of the Weiss Shopping Center and then the Harrisburg Area Community College, or the HAC. This tree was passed by Confederate troops advancing in this direction across Rock Creek, and those troops would later head straight forward in the fight for northeast Gettysburg along what we know as Coon's Brickyard against Coster's Brigade. So these Confederate troops here from Louisiana and North Carolina passed right by this tree on the morning of July 1st, 1863. Also, just on the other side of the Weismantle farm, where the attack of the Georgia troops under Dole's Georgia Brigade that advanced across the Blocher's Knoll, or what we today know as Barlow's Knoll area. You can go back and watch my video on Blocher's Hill and the fight that took place there. Again, this is one of those witness trees that's very, very, very old. This tree probably goes back to the early 1830s or so, and it does have some broken limbs on it. It is alive. It does sit here along the Rock Creek, so it is fed constant clean water for its roots, and it's probably why it's grown to be so old and so massive. It's one of the witness trees here in town that really gets overlooked because of its position. If you're not familiar with Gettysburg in general, you'll probably miss it because the shopping center sits and blocks in front of it. Also along the road is some buildings over here, and then of course the noted cell phone towers that can be seen throughout the town at nighttime, which are lit up at night. The only reason that I know this tree is I used to work just right over here in this building before it was the Harrisburg Area Community College. There was a small radio shack there that I worked at for some years, and we used to come out here along these benches and sit and eat our lunch, and I remember seeing that tree. And of course, when I began the website, I remembered that I did videos on witness tree and the large witness tree that was back here. Again, so this has been the George Weismantle Farm, Part 2, here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook, taking a look at the old walnut witness tree here along the Rock Creek.